I know on the hearts and minds of all Iranians around the world is the situation in Iran. And I know today, right now, it's approaching midnight in Tehran, but during the day and all night there have been protests all around Iran in so many different cities. The crackdown in certain areas has gotten worse, and so I know a lot of people are very occupied with that. And everyone I talk to, including clients, it's just something that's so much on their mind. It's hard to think about other things, and life can also feel on pause. And I mentioned at the top of the show that I'm reading, or I will be reading a book on revolutions, because I want to inform myself more about what's happening, what's going on, what we can learn from the past to understand the current situation. But what I've also read is that these types of things, although we see so much happening, they tend to be a marathon more than a sprint, meaning that they take time. That, of course, we want to see change, we want to see it happen immediately, but it usually does take some time for an uprising to turn into a movement, to turn into a revolution. And so what I've heard from commentators who know much more about these subjects is that what we're seeing now in Iran has changed from an uprising to a movement. And when you have a movement, it can go towards a few things. Of course, it can end, but also in the two outcomes that can come about is reform or revolution. And in this case, reform does not seem like it's on the table. That the people of Iran, of course, people outside also want revolution, but the people in Iran who are the most important, because they have to live through it day to day, they want a revolution. They don't want a reform. They don't want to sit down with the government to make changes. They want to completely change the government, the whole structure, and everything about it. So it seems like reform is not an option anymore, and revolution is the only option that is there, that can happen. And so, that being said, even if it's what the people want, it still will take some time. And so, because of that, I think it's important for us who are outside of Iran to make sure we recognize that this will likely be a marathon. And because of that, we have to be consistent with our effort and continue. And even when I say effort, a great motivation is to consider what people in Iran are experiencing and how they literally are risking their lives for what they're doing. And so anything we do pales in comparison to that. But to make sure we keep our efforts consistent. And so that can be our motivation. But even still, with good motivation, good intentions, even if you want something so bad, there are still limits to what we do. By that I mean we have to be aware that we don't experience something like a compassion fatigue, or I've seen someone write Iran fatigue, that can set in, that we're talking about it every day, we're watching videos, we're sharing. What we don't want to see happen is that people get tired or they don't think it's going to make a difference, and so we stop doing those things. So it's up to each of us individually and then collectively to make sure we keep up that consistency, because it won't be easy. Even right now, it's been going into, I think, the 4th week of protests, and I can feel it myself. There's this sense that I'm not as calm as usual, like a bit of a state of stress, kind of like if you think of a fight or flight. I can feel a bit more activated in a way, and I'm sure many people can relate to that as well. And so I don't want to focus on those of us outside of Iran and how difficult that is, because of course we have it nothing like what the people of Iran are experiencing. But I do think it's important for us to take care of ourselves in the way that we can keep helping our brothers and sisters in Iran. Because if you want to even take care of your child, you have to make sure you're okay to keep taking care of them. In a similar way, I want us to be aware of what we're doing and how we are staying active, but then making sure we are okay at the same time. Because, as I was saying, it can feel like life is paused with everything happening there, but we still have to take care of ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, logistics of life and things that we have to do as far as work and finances and all that stuff that we have to make sure we take care of as well. We can't lose sight of those things, especially when we consider this is not something that we were quickly going to take a break from life and this is going to get resolved and then we go back to it. So I do want us to focus on that. And related to that, I wanted to talk about a distinction that can be part of how we our mindset or the paradigm we take into this situation of results versus responsibility, and how our focus can be more on one or the other, and how that might impact what we do and how long we keep doing it. So looking at results, of course, we do anything we do, and in this case, when we're sharing and doing whatever we can, contacting politicians, spreading awareness, spreading the word of what's going on, we are hoping for a result, which is, in this case, revolution. We want to see things change in Iran. So, of course, that's our intention. Now, that makes sense, but we have to be careful not to get caught up in seeing the results immediately, or that if we're not seeing results, to give up. And that's where I think the overemphasis on results and seeing the results can get us in trouble. Or if we think of the result of a single action, it very often will lead to us not taking that action because each single action doesn't have that much of an impact. One tweet is not going to change this, even from someone famous, but let alone from any of us who might just be sending something out into social media. One tweet isn't going to change everything. Or even I went to some protests this weekend, and I did actually have this thought, looking at all the people there, several thousands of people there, and each of them chanting things, saying things, holding signs. And so really we can look at this collective effort of just one protest. We can break it down to probably a million different things, millions of things that people did. When consider each step people took, each thing they said, holding their signs, whatever they even put on to, to dress in a certain way to promote things. So many things went into that, and together it became something, and even that is not going to change the whole thing, but had an impact. But if each one of those things was dissected, someone would say, well, what's the point? And so people, I hear them saying that, well, what's the point if I show up to the protest? And one person at a protest does not change the protest, but if a million people show up to a protest, it does. And so we have to be aware that the result won't come from our individual steps, and to see, does this make a difference or not in and of itself? Because usually the answer is alone, no, it won't make a difference. But looking at the collective result, which will show up over time. So this is a process, not something that just happens quickly. And when we have process results, they're usually slow. You often don't see them, and they often happen in leaps and bounds, meaning that sometimes you won't see anything happen, then all of a sudden you'll see a big change. It won't be linear progress. It'll be something progressive over time, that all of a sudden you'll notice things change or some big change takes place. So I think we have to be careful not to get so fixated on the results and the immediate results, because that's going to make us want to give up. It's even like if you start exercising. One workout even won't change much, but the collection of the workouts can make a difference over time. And so if you look at, will it make a difference if I work out today? Really not that much, one workout, but it's all of that together. So think one of not just the immediate result, think of the collective results that we're having together, and be aware that the results often are not seen very soon and quickly, especially in something so large scale like this. And so I think what can be more important is for us to shift the focus to our responsibility, and each of us as individuals. So rather than thinking, does this thing make a difference? Can I know it's going to make a difference? I think a better perspective is to look at the responsibility that me as an individual, am I meeting my responsibility and my duty in doing what I can here? I don't even know if it's going to make a difference, but can I look at what I'm doing and feel that I'm meeting that responsibility as much as I can? So we all have a cup that we can consider we can fill up as much as we can. So I have my cup of responsibility. How much of that am I going to fill? Am I going to do everything I can, so that when I look back, I can reflect to think I did the most that I could? Maybe it had little impact. I don't know even what impact it has, but I want to feel that I don't have regret about not meeting that responsibility. So again, our feelings in this is much less important than what's going on to the people in Iran. But if we consider our support, and when I think of what people are doing, and to keep that effort going, I think it'll be important for us to be aware of the mindsets we bring into what's going on. Because if you think, well, I posted for a week and nothing happened, then you're going to stop. But if you think, well, I posted for a week and I think that was good, even how can I do it better, and that felt like I met my responsibility, then you can feel good about that to keep you fueled and going forward, rather than thinking, well, I didn't see a result. Because that's what I hear some people saying, well, I keep posting stuff, but who cares? What difference does it make? And again, each post, almost no impact, very little. Collectively, a whole lot. Just like what's happening in Iran, one person can't be a revolution. It's all the people coming together that makes that happen. So if we want to be part of that, imagine there's going to be some future time you can look back on this. I want you to feel good about what you've done when it comes to this, that you did what you could, that you met your responsibility to the fullest. And this really applies to most areas of life. If you're a parent, you literally will do like a million things, millions of things for your kids. If you consider everything you break down into moments and seconds and all of that for your child. Each one of them won't really have an impact, but overall, that's what makes a good parent and a good childhood for your children, is that you give them that. So if we look at individual results, we very easily can get discouraged. Or if we look at the individual result or impact of a single action, you likely won't do it because you get discouraged, and we go into our immediate gratification and thinking in a short-term way that we think there's no point in going forward with this. But if we do consider our responsibility, that can lead to a very, very different mindset. And so what we do see happening is people posting and people sharing things does have an impact. So people are constantly, I see, tweeting, posting on their stories, on Instagram, on Facebook, what's going on in Iran, sharing with one another. And it's been amazing seeing how quickly information spreads within the community, where I'll see someone post something that is pretty interesting, and then within minutes or hours I'll definitely see like 20, 50, 100 more people post that same thing. And so yes, it can be repetitive, it can be redundant, but those things keep it in the public eye. Because we also have to keep in mind that, of course, for us Iranians, this seems like the only thing that matters in the world, but for non-Iranians, it's not that way. Just like, if we're going to be real with ourselves, there currently are other humanitarian crises happening in the world, and in the past there have been, and maybe you've seen someone post about it, but you didn't have the same feeling about, oh, there's something happening in this country or in this region of the world. You might be like, oh, that's not good, but it wasn't necessarily something that you focused on, or then you tweeted about or posted on Instagram, or you said something about, or even that you informed yourself about. So we do have to be aware of that difference, that when we're so in something, it seems like, how can anyone be thinking or talking about anything else? But we have to remember that that's because we are in it so much and it's so important to us, and it's different for other people. They won't have that same experience. So we do have to be consistent and keep reminding them, letting them know what's going on, sharing different aspects of what's going on, because as much as we'd like to think we're just purely acting in rational ways, and if something is unjust we respond, we know that images and certain stories or certain aspects of a story might tug on someone's heartstrings in a way that makes them get involved. That's just the way it is. And that's also why art can be so important in these kinds of movements. Even me right now talking, as long as I am about these issues, I hope it's helpful in some ways to anyone who listens. But I know that one song or one piece of art that someone puts up, or one image, a painting or drawing that someone does, can have such a bigger impact because it penetrates deeper to those feelings and connects in a deeper way that then might connect to the viewer, and they might feel more likely to want to get involved. You know, that song about Oyeb that Shervin has made, that actually it's one of the last days you can submit a vote for it for the Grammy. So if you can go online, do a little bit of research. It's not very difficult, but you can vote for it so that it might be winning the Grammy, that it's a new category for songs for social change. And for what I've seen, it's gotten a lot of the votes, and each vote does matter. They count the votes, and I don't know exactly how they tabulate it, but it does have an impact. So please go ahead and do that. But we see that art has such a way of connecting people, and people sharing those things that might connect to someone who's not related to the Iranian community anyway, that say, wow, that's powerful, that's intense, and then they might reshare it or post or get involved in some way, because they're going to need our attention, especially because their internet access is limited in Iran, and they have certain aspects that make it harder for them to share what's going on. We have to be their voice and continue to be their voice, meaning that we have to stay consistent, I would recommend post every few hours. Make sure you don't go too long without posting something. It's very easy for media cycles to be on something. We see it all the time. It's the flavor of the week or the month. It's so important. Everyone's talking about it, and they totally forget about it. And we can't let that happen in this case. And the only way we can make that not happen is to be consistent and to make sure we don't give up and we don't stop posting and talking about it. And also recognize that the way we look at things can have a huge impact on this. And as I said, let's focus on our individual responsibility. I want to make sure I do my part, not am I sure this thing I'm doing has an impact and a result. Am I being responsible? Am I meeting my duty to my brothers and sisters in Iran to help them the most that I can? All right, let's go to another commercial break. We'll be right back.